Let's now talk about a feature that is actually common to all objects in JavaScript, and that is getters and setters. So every object in JavaScript can have setters and getter properties, and we call these special properties accessor properties, while the more normal properties are called data properties. So getters and setters are basically functions that get and set values, so just as the name says, but on the outside they still look like regular properties. So let's first take a look at getters and setters in a simple object literal. And for that, I'm going to use the Bangkok example from the Bankis application. So very simple object letter here. The owner is Jack. Then some simple movement. The value here don't really matter. But now to add a getter to this object, we can start by writing a normal method. So let's say that we want a method to get the latest movement. And so let's call it latest. And then to transform this into a getter, we simply prepend the keyword get. And so let's simply return the latest movement here. So that is this dot movement dot slice minus 1. But this is actually gonna return array. So an array with the last position. And so we can simply take that out using pop method. And we could have used this structure as well, but I didn't want to save this into an external variable first. And so now we can use this getter like this. So a count, and then we say latest, but simply use it as a property. So we don't call a method. Instead, we write it as if it was a property. So let's see. And indeed that returns 300. Here, so this can be very useful when we want to read something as a property, but still need to do some calculations before. And now we can do the same also as a setter. So we say set latest again, and then here we can basically add a new movement to the array, and any setter method needs to have exactly one parameter. So in this case, this is simply a movement. So let's say this dot movements dot push, and then that movement that we have just passed into. Now it's not mandatory to specify a setter when we have a getter for same property. So just a getter or setter will be enough. And so how do we use the setter now? So if it was a regular method, then we will have to do this. So a call dot latest, let's say 50. But now this is actually like a property, not a method. And so we can simply set it just like we set any other property. So we essentially set it equal to 50. And so now if we take a look at the movements, then it will give us the complete array with the 50 there at the end. And so in a nutshell, this is how getters and setters work for any regular object in JavaScript. Now however, classes do also have a getters and setters, and they work in the exact same way. And so let's try them out here in our person class. So here we can, for example, add a getter for the age property. So we can say get age, and then we return the age. So this is very similar to the call age method that we already have here. But that doesn't matter because this is really just a demonstration example. So like this, we will be able to basically read the age of any object using a property. So let's try that here. For example, Jessica.age. So this time we actually need to log it to the console. You see here, we now get the same value. So you see that the getter is indeed just like any regular method that we set on the whole type. So that's a very simple use case of a getter. But getters and setters can actually be very useful for data validation. And as an example, let's try some validation with the name. So for that, I actually change first name here to full name. And so here we expect a full name. So a name which basically contains a space. So let's say Jessica David here. And now we can create setup for the full name property, which we check if this is actually full name. So set full name, and then we need the name itself. And then here we need some logic. So to test if it contains space, if its name includes space, and then we actually want to set this full name to the name that was received. But if not, we want to give it an alert. So the given name is not a full name. So in this case, what's really important to understand is that we are creating setup for property name that does already exist. So a full name is already property that we are trying to set here. But then we also have a setter. And so now what's going to happen is that each time this code here is executed, so whenever we set full name on this keyword, then actually this method here, so this setter is gonna be executed. So that name that we passed it as a full name will then become this name. So let's check that out. So now you see Jessica David here. We got this crazy error here of maximum cost stack size exceeded. Now that's a very critical error message. But what happened here is that there is a conflict. So right now, both the setter function and this constructor function are trying to set the exact same property name, so that gives origin to that weird error. So what we need to do instead is to here create a new property name, and the convention for doing that. So when we have a setter which is trying to set a property that does already exist, then here as a convention we add underscore like this. So again, this is just convention, it's not JavaScript feature. It's really just a different variable name to avoid that naming conflict. However, now when we do this, we are actually creating new variable, so a full name variable. So let's try this now actually. So if you try to look at the Jessica divet, you see that right now the property that exists is underscore full name. And so right now we cannot do that Jessica dot full name, that simply does not exist. And so to fix this, we now also to create a getter for full name property. And so that will simply return underscore full name. So get full name, this dot underscore full name. So let's see. So if we try to do the same now, then you see that we are back to having this full name here. So this pattern here is important to understand whenever we try to set a property that already exists. Now let's try another name here just to see what's happened. So let's create water new %cf water. We are now using a name with a one word 1965. So now we get this error, water is not full name. If we check out water here, doesn't have any name, just birth year. But if we then put it as a full name here, water white, like this, and so water, then we get the underscore full name. But just like before, we can then also access water.full name. Because of that setter, or actually that getter that we just defined earlier. So this is another nice feature or classes that can be very useful sometimes. Now we don't need to use getters or setters, and many people actually do. But as I just said, sometimes it's nice to be able to use this feature, and especially when we need like a validation like this by the time we are creating a new object. So that's essentially what this setter here does.